Edwin Mah Lee, May 5, 1952, December 12, 2017, was an American politician and attorney who served as the 43rd mayor of San Francisco, and was the first Asian American to hold the office. He was city administrator before being appointed mayor. On January 11, 2011, Lee was appointed by the Board of Supervisors to serve out the remaining term of former Mayor Gavin Newsom after Newsom resigned to take office as Lieutenant Governor of California. On November 8, 2011, Lee won the election to serve a full term as mayor. He was re-elected in 2015. Prior to his employment with the City and County of San Francisco, Lee was the managing attorney for the San Francisco Asian Law Caucus, where he worked from 1979 to 1989. From 1989 to 1991, Lee worked as a whistleblower ordinance investigator and the Deputy Director of Employment Relations in San Francisco. Lee later worked from 1991 until 1996 as the director of the Human Rights Commission. Afterwards, Lee became director of the City Purchasing Department in 1996 until his appointment to city administrator in 2000. After Lee completed law school and received his Juris Doctor degree, he worked as managing attorney for the San Francisco Asian Law Caucus, where he was an advocate for affordable housing and the rights of immigrants and renters. In 1989, Mayor Art Agnos appointed Lee to be the city's first investigator under the city's whistleblower ordinance. Agnos later appointed him Deputy Director of Human Relations. In 1991, he was hired as Executive Director of the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, serving in that capacity under Mayors Agnos, Frank Jordan, and Willie Brown. Brown appointed him Director of City Purchasing, where, among other responsibilities, he ran the city's first minority, women-owned business enterprise program. In 2000, he was appointed Director of Public Works for the city, and in 2005 was appointed by Mayor Newsom to a 5-year term as city administrator, to which he was reappointed in 2010. As city administrator, Lee oversaw the reduction of city government and implemented the city's first-ever 10-year capital plan. In 2010, a vacancy in the office of mayor was impending when incumbent Gavin Newsom was elected as Lieutenant Governor of California. Under the San Francisco City Charter, vacancies in the mayoral office are filled by a majority vote of the Board of Supervisors, in which each supervisor is barred from voting for himself or herself. Speculation about possible appointees and debate on whether or not the old Board of Supervisors should cast the vote for the new mayor soon followed Newsom's election as Lieutenant Governor. The Board of Supervisors nominated 4 people: former Mayor Art Agnos, Sheriff Michael Hennessy, former Board of Supervisors President Aaron Peskin, and Lee. None of them captured the necessary 6 votes at a meeting of the board on January 4, 2011, but after debate, some supervisors expressed willingness to switch their support to Lee, and the meeting was recessed until January 7. At the January 7 meeting, the old board voted 10-1 to elect Lee as mayor, with outgoing supervisor Chris Daly casting the lone no vote. At the time, Lee promised not to seek election if appointed, a statement that helped to gain support for his appointment. The board included people who aimed to run in the November 2011 mayoral elections, none of whom wished to give the mayoral position to someone who might be their competitor in those elections, which would give that person the significant political advantages of incumbency. The vote was preliminary and non-binding, as Newsom had delayed his resignation until new members of the board took office. A final vote was taken on January 11 by the new board to confirm Lee, one day after Newsom's resignation. The board voted unanimously for Lee and he took office immediately thereafter. Lee's term expired in January 2012, when the winner of the November 2011 mayoral election would assume office. Lee originally pledged not to run in that election. However, some San Francisco political activists, including Rose Pak, consultant for the San Francisco Chinese Chamber of Commerce, Planning Commission President Christina Ohlog, Assistant District Attorney Victor Huang, Progress for All Chief Consultant Enrique Pierce and Eddie Ching, started a Run Ed Run campaign in June 2011 to encourage him to put his name on the ballot. By July 28, Lee stated that he had visited his daughters in Washington state and discussed with them the possibility of his standing for election, but had still not made up his mind. Senator Dianne Feinstein, herself a former appointee mayor who had gone on to win re-election for 2 terms, publicly supported a Lee candidacy. The San Francisco Chronicle wrote that unnamed city officials close to Lee stated to the media that Lee had nearly finalized his decision to run. On August 7, 2011, Lee reneged on his promise to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors when he formally announced his decision to seek election. He stated that the atmosphere of political cooperation during his months in office had inspired him to run. Lee won the November 2011 election, with John Avalos finishing in second. In an election where Lee had no challengers with substantial name recognition or experience in politics, he was re-elected with only 56% of the vote. The candidate with the next most votes, local musician Francisco Herrera, received 14% of the vote. Lee implemented a revitalization of mid-market, San Francisco, providing companies that moved into the area with a temporary exemption from paying San Francisco's 1.5% payroll tax. Twitter, which had threatened to move out of San Francisco into the San Francisco Peninsula without the tax break, moved into mid-market in 2011. In October 2013, Square moved its headquarters to the mid-market area, followed by Uber and Dolby. In 2014, this exemption saved companies $34 million. The plan drew controversy not only for the tax breaks given to corporations, but for the effects of gentrification on the nearby Tenderloin neighborhood. In 2012, Lee proposed the creation of a housing trust fund, which would generate between $20 million and $50 million of funding for affordable and middle-class housing per year for 30 years. In 2014, Lee and David Chiu, the president of the Board of Supervisors, announced the creation of the Ellis Act Housing Preference Program, which would help people evicted from their homes by landlords using the Ellis Act. That year, Lee pledged to construct 30,000 new and rehabilitated homes throughout the city by 2020, with half available to low, working and middle-income San Franciscans, and launched a small site acquisition program to fund the purchase and stabilization of multifamily rental buildings in neighborhoods that are susceptible to evictions and rising rents. Lee sponsored a $310 million bond measure to pay for housing for the November 2015 general election, which passed. In 2017, Lee approved a $44 million project to build affordable housing for teachers. In December 2013, Lee called for an increase to San Francisco's minimum wage. In 2014, the Board of Supervisors unanimously approved a measure to raise the city's minimum wage for the November 2014 ballot. In October 2014, Lee announced that the city's minimum wage of $10.74 per hour would be adjusted to $11.05 per hour, effective January 1, 2015. In 2015, Lee co-chaired the minimum wage campaign with Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, and worked with the Service Employees International Union United Healthcare Workers West for a November ballot initiative to gradually increase California's minimum wage to $15 an hour. The California State Senate and State Assembly approved Senate Bill 3, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2022. On January 13, 2012, incumbent Sheriff Ross Mirkarimi was charged with domestic violence battery, child endangerment, and dissuading a witness in connection with a New Year's Eve altercation he had with his wife. On March 20, 2012, Mayor Ed Lee gave Sheriff Mirkarimi a 24-hour ultimatum to resign from his post. While jury selection was underway, Mirkarimi entered into a plea agreement with the district attorney and pled guilty to one count of misdemeanor false imprisonment. When Mirkarimi refused to resign, the mayor suspended him and appointed a temporary replacement, Vicky Hennessy. City Attorney Dennis Herrera crafted the formal complaint and sent it to the city's Ethics Commission and Board of Supervisors, who accepted it and then investigated Mirkarimi under misconduct charges as required by the city charter. On August 16, the commission ruled by 4-1 that Mirkarimi committed official misconduct when he falsely imprisoned his wife. 6 of the charges brought by the mayor matched District Attorney George Gascon's original criminal charges. 5 of those were overruled, including the charge that Mirkarimi dissuaded witnesses and that he abused the power of his office. On October 9, 2012, 4 of the 11 San Francisco district supervisors voted against Lee's removal of Mirkarimi as sheriff. The mayor would have needed the votes of 9 board members to remove Mirkarimi.